Hello and welcome to another episode of Video Game Logic. Today's episode was recorded on January the 21st, 2020. I'm your host, Gaming Psychologist. Purposefully skipping the name list this week, it's...
Caffeine Rage?
Indeed. On today's show, we will of course be discussing the games that we've played. Rockstar has removed GTA 4 from Steam because of Games for Windows Live. Every Half-Life game is free to play on Steam for the next 2 months. Joe Biden calls game developers, quote, little creeps who make titles that, quote, teach you how to kill. And if we have time, we'll be hitting a Steam Discovery queue. Timestamps will be in the show notes following their respective topics. Hello, Rage. How much of that cut out?
Here and there, but not as bad as usual. So,
oh, that's good.
That's a positive.
Progress. We're slowly, maybe, making progress on our audio issues.
Oh, no, maybe it is me, and maybe I have some sort of audio issue with my computer, which, if it's stemming from where I think it might be, it's not the first time I've had an issue with my motherboard. I think next time I build a computer, I'm not going to bother with Asus.
We're pretty sure we've eliminated Craig as the problem. He might aggravate the problem, but we don't think he's the source of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't think that I'm the problem.
For once.
But that leaves sort of Discord itself or something wrong with...
Or a Windows update really doesn't like my hardware. Which if that's the case, there's not a lot I could do for a couple months.
Have to find an alternative recording solution. Or crawl back to Skype and be very sad. But that's a problem for another day. We've spent over an hour trying to fix this, and we got to do something to get the show out. So, what is it they say? The show must go on. Hopefully it holds.
Thank you, Elton John.
God, I wish I was Elton John. Rich and fabulous. Neither of which am I those things. But as long as Craig didn't mess up earlier, there are a couple of stories that I told that will be good Franken content. And I guess we have recorded bits and pieces of this, although I don't think anybody wants to hear us sit quietly and go, is that different? Is that better? What if you try this? Some poster said this on Reddit.
Yeah.
Oh, well. So, without further ado... let's go ahead and go talk about some games we played this week. I've got 2, you've got 3. Do you want to do the sandwich thing, or?
Well, I still have like 2.5 because I could talk on yours.
Yeah, that's true. It's however you want to do it.
So, yeah, we could go back and forth. So, a couple of weeks ago, I'm happy to reach a little bit because I wanted to start focusing on where the water tastes like wine, our game club for next week. So that cut into my game time. So let's go back a little bit and talk about when I fired up Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, which is on Game Pass. And this is one of those times that, okay, it's interesting. I'm not sure if I would pay $15 for it, but it's included in the subscription. Let's go ahead and check it out anyway. And it is kind of an interesting, almost puzzle game, but this is so Twitch bait. It's not even funny. It's one of those games that doesn't give you any idea what the fuck is going on, and basically just throws you in not even the deep end, because the game honestly isn't that deep. And it's builds itself off of wacky physics and figure out how it's going to work out. But in the end, I just found myself annoyed by it because the game is really random in what works and what doesn't. Which, since I was treating it as almost a puzzle game, doesn't work out all that well. It's sort of like back when I was playing Cluster Trucks, and I got annoyed with it because the physics would do odd things and sometimes would make a level unbeatable. Well, that's not fun to me. Sure, it's kind of funny if you're streaming and laughing at it, but uh, it's sort of like gratuitous space battles, right?
Yeah, I like gratuitous space battles. Okay.
I mean, you basically just set up an army and then let the two fight it out. Yes, you can take direct control of a single unit, but that's usually not very helpful whenever there's 20, 30 different enemies on each, or different units on each side. But then there's other times where you're able to just cheese the game by selecting an archer and picking off the two units that it's going to throw at you. It is silly, it is goofy, but it's not really what I was looking for whenever I wanted something fun to play. Like I said, it just feels so much like Twitch bait that I just couldn't really get into it. Which is a shame because it looked interesting. It looked kind of goofy. It looked fun, but it wasn't fun because there's really no tactics. It's just, I'll try it and maybe it'll work this time. Maybe it won't. Right?
Yeah, it has looked very fun to watch when I've seen like people, put it on their YouTube channels or whatever, but I've always thought, I've never played it, but I've always thought, this would be fun for like a half an hour and then it would get old.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much a great example of why the Game Pass is so good is that, play for that half an hour, let it get old, then, turn it off. It is still in early access, though, so maybe they'll add something interesting, but it's been in early access it's been in active development since late 2016. And honestly, outside of the campaign mode essentially just being a handful of puzzle levels, which are all themed. So, like, the early ones are all Neanderthals. So, you have Neanderthals with clubs. You have Neanderthals with primitive bows. You have, with spears. You have Neanderthals that have a very primitive shield. Then you have, like, a witch doctor that's able to summon spikes. And it feels like there's not a lot of nuance to it. It feels like, okay, you have to do it this way in the puzzle levels or in the campaign levels, and no other way. Well, the sandbox mode is pretty much the same way, only you're able to just throw whatever. So throw a mammoth at a Roman legion, right?
Right.
And sometimes it works out because the physics work in your favor and knocks over half the legion. Sometimes it doesn't. And it's just kind of it's just like I said, Twitch bait. Load it up for a half an hour and try it out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably do that just eventually at some point, unless it disappears off the Game Pass. But I mean, your thoughts are basically what I expected when I eventually played it.
Well, I was trying it out to see if there was more to it than what it looks like, because there has been times that I went into a game that I wasn't expecting to think a lot of, and it turned out to be deeper than I thought it would be, or more interesting.
Right.
Like one JRPG is a good example. I was expecting it to be just a dumb JRPG, but there was some nuance to it. It was the Quartet one.
Omega Quintet?
Omega Quintet, yeah. Yeah, I went into that expecting absolutely nothing out of it, and actually was a fairly decent JRPG. So, there are times that I am pleasantly surprised. This was just one of those times that I went in with my preconceived notions, and turned out I was way overshooting what I thought what I should be thinking about this game. It's even worse.
Yeah.
So if you want a battle simulator that you could actually do stuff in, I would suggest going to check out Gratuitous Space Battles.
Or possibly Gratuitous Tank Battles.
I'm of mixed feelings of that one. I've played both. Gratuitous Tank Battles, it's a little closer to tower defense than what the original was. And it's starting to feel a little like there's one solution to everything. Instead of gratuitous space battles where you had a lot more options. But maybe that was just me. And it has been a long time since I tried it.
Yeah, I know I played it at one point, but it's been a couple of years, I think. I think I played it when I was during that time when I was unemployed, which was about 2 years ago. So, yeah. Sweet. Well, is it my turn?
Yeah.
Cool. This first one's going to go pretty fast. So I played Galaxy of Pen and Paper for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours. I actually played this one around Christmas time. I've held on to a few games to help string me along while I've been playing stuff that takes like 50 to 100 hours or more to get through.
Just Cause 3.
Yeah. So Galaxy of Pen and Paper it's supposed to be a tabletop inspired or tabletop like game, but really it just plays like a JRPG, which is fine, but that's not exactly what I wanted it for or what I expected when I played it. I got it, I'm pretty sure, a review code for this. I don't
know where I got this. I have it.
I had this. No, this game came out in 2017. Maybe I got it as a bundle or something because I had it and I didn't remember buying it. I mean, it's not bad. It's not a bad game. It's a pretty solid JRPG system. There's some pretty decent complexity to the different character types and the way you can build a character. There is certainly some tabletop elements with sort of rolling, randomizing some stats and attacks being, actions being played out as dice rolls. And you do get some situations that pop up and you can choose to do things and you might have to roll on it based on your character level or skill or whatever. But pretty quickly, it just turns into min-max your party so that you get kind of good synergy between everyone and then just click till you win. Because if you get the right party composition with the right sort of abilities, you can stun lock enemies or make them all like fight each other all the time, or there's a few different things you can do that are basically OP and the AI has no counter for. The beginning of the game is super grindy and really boring because you only have 2 characters and they're super weak. But then after the first few hours, when you build up and get the next party member and get away from the initial starting area and get access to your ship, because this is a sci-fi themed game, then the game just becomes super easy. And the story is okay, but a lot of it is just randomly, you're clicking like randomly generate battle, randomly generate quest in the beginning so you can build up, like I said, so you can grind your way to success. So it's got a lot of good sort of front end, I guess, world building where you do your character creation and choose your class and choose the backgrounds and like reading through all the stuff that they've made, looking at the stats, and then it's like, okay, just click till you win. And if you die, it's okay. You'll still get some XP for the enemies you did kill, and you'll grind up to, towards the next level. So, I mean, it's okay, but it's not great. There's better JRPGs out there. What is it? Because this is not the first game in this series, because there's several of, something of pen and paper. I think there's one that's Knights of Pen and Paper and Office of Pen and Paper or something like that. This is like I think the third one that this developer has made. And Knights of Pen and Paper is really good because it's a lot more like classic D&D. And the story is told in a little bit better way. So, it's not bad. If you're really looking for something that's a little bit silly, that's got a little bit of sort of nerdy 90s referential humor, and sort of a casual JRPG, it's definitely not like bad. And it'll run on anything. It ran no problems on my laptop over Christmas at my parents' house. So, it's not like a total waste, but it's also not great. if you catch it on sale for like a couple of bucks, I think it's probably worth that if you like this sort of thing. But I mean, I wouldn't pay $15 for it. Or if it shows up in a bundle or something like that, like it would be worth it as part of a collection. Sort of a fun to play for a while, but then kind of drop it type games. So yeah, Galaxy of Pen and Paper.
Okay, which brings it back around to me for one of the games that has about the worst title possible for what it actually is. Simple Rockets 2. So this is the second game in the Simple Rockets series. And for those who've played the first one, it was a very simple, hence the name, 2D rocket simulator. Think of it sort of like a stepping stone from not knowing anything about rocket science to KSP or Kerbal Space Program. I shouldn't use the initialism because that's annoying whenever people don't know what it is. Well, Simple Rockets 2, the training wheels are off. They've gone absolutely insane with this game to both a good and bad degree. So this is still in early access. Both of my games this week were early access titles. But Simple Rockets 2, they've, like I said, gone nuts. They've introduced things like different propellants, there's a lot of tweakables on the rocket engines already. It's basically like you're playing with procedural parts, so you're able to build up pretty much anything you want out of just a handful of different parts. And be able to tweak the size and scale of everything. It's daunting. And there's layers I haven't even scratched. Like, they have a fully programmable autopilot system in this game that goes just insanely deep. Going from pulling orbital mechanic numbers to be able to do things that MechJeb could only dream of.
I was going to say, is this like MechJeb or comparable to MechJeb?
No, this is programmable, as in you're going in and setting parameters. This is not like going in and hitting a button on MechJeb.
I thought you could program MechJeb, though.
To some degree, yes. But this is more like a Kerbal operating system, where you're going in and building an actual program. It's nuts. And they're talking about building an actual career mode that the original never had. Putting in a planet builder and other features. So the game is far from complete, but there's absolutely a lot to do if you're willing to just goof around in a sandbox mode right now. You can see a little bit of it in the recent events where on start, countdown from 3, then display blast off, set throttle to full, lock heading to current, then activate stage, wait for altitude to hit this. It's a lot simpler than the Kerbal's operating system was, but it's performs the same purpose of just drag and drop and build a full programming tree. It's actually quite impressive on just how much you could do with it. On top of that, like I said, there's a lot of tinkering that you could do with engines. There's a lot of tinkering you could do with the various tanks and structural components. People have gone absolutely nuts. There's a full, let's put it this way. I was goofing around with the workshop and just seeing what people are building. Somebody built the Falcon Heavy, complete with Tesla payload.
Nice. That's very cool.
Fully working. It just doesn't have the autopilot built into it. Unfortunately. I mean, they've done a lot with this game already. And it'll be interesting to see what they do in the future, as well as what the modding community does if they latch on to it. Because that's the thing, is that the community does seem to be behind them, but how many of them are actually modders, right?
Yeah. That's very cool, though. I had not necessarily avoided it, but I really thought too much about it. I don't have anything against simple rockets, but I like more complexity in that type of game. So,
Yeah, you wanted some more complexity. Well, Simple Rockets 2 has it in spades.
nice.
And I will say that it does feel a little bit like a mobile title at times, with how the camera is handled. But they also have some nice quality of life things that they brought over from the mobile version. That sounds a little crazy saying that, but having the ability to control the craft from sliders so that you could hit a little bit better of uh, uh, a gravity turn instead of having to tweak and repeatedly tap a button, for example, since keyboard controls are not analog. Having it where you could set roll, pitch, and yaw to sliders so that you could hit an exact angle instead of trying to tweak the craft to meet your to be able to deal with the digital input of a keyboard is nice, or be able to use the ring system that they have. So each of the planes that you could control a craft on has a ring that you could use to adjust it as well, which is a holdover from the mobile version of Simple Rockets. And you could use that instead, and the rocket will respond to that, which sounds silly that I'm praising them for holding over something like that for mobile. But for some craft, that actually works a little bit better, to be able to hold to one plane and have the rest of the craft respond to it, and have the not really fly itself because it still requires a lot of nuance, but have it be more accessible. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Trying to think of anything else really, because it's still in the early access phases. They do have mechanical or mechanics in it, as well as in the Falcon Heavy mock-up I toyed around with for about 5 minutes, but wasn't able to fly because I had no idea just how it was supposed to fly. Whenever it launches, the strong back is in it, and it actually tilts back properly, like the real Falcon Heavy or Falcon spacecraft does, because it's hooked up to hydraulics.
Mm-hmm.
They have hinges, they have hydraulics in the game already, and there's some really impressive stuff. There's I'm just looking at the Steam community. They have the 1010 rocket from the Adventures of 1010, actually on the moon.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
They have someone launching Sputnik. There's, I believe that's the original Enterprise, as in before the refit. They have Air Force One, because it does do planes as well. And with the procedural parts, you're able to get quite a bit out of it, and you're not having to try to, build these things out of just, all the little pieces to try to fit them together like a jigsaw puzzle, which is a nice change of pace from how Kerbal does it. But yeah, overall, I'm really rather impressed with it. It'll be nice to see a proper tutorial outside of just the just how to build a craft with a few parts. See them talk about different propellants, the pros and cons of it, or see that come in more and more into play, especially if you go into a career mode.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it's not a bad start for. Well, I picked it up. I think it was like $6 or $7. I picked up pretty deep discount on the Steam Winter Sale. and I would say it's worth it.
Good to know. You've definitely piqued my interest with the fact that it's got more complexity.
Yeah.
Less simple rockets, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not so simple rockets.
Yeah. So my next game is one that you talked about, I guess 2 weeks ago, since last week was the award show. Just Cause 3. So I picked it up and started playing it. Well, picked it up in the sense of like I started playing it.
Yeah, because I sent it to you for Christmas.
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, I'm drinking the coffee you sent me for Christmas.
Merry Christmas. I really like it, but God, fuck playing this game with keyboard and mouse.
Yeah, I started to just juggle back and forth between keyboard and mouse and controller, depending on what I'm doing. Because, damn.
Yeah, the running and the shooting and the things is great with the keyboard and mouse. Perfect, just like you would expect. But every single vehicle interaction is just a nightmare. It doesn't matter. Aircraft, helicopters, cars and trucks, boats, they're all terrible. So I just started using my controller to play it. There's so much auto aim that the shooting isn't really too much of a problem. And I do think that the controller does make gliding around with the wingsuit and the parachute makes it better and easier. But I mean, those were fine with keyboard and mouse because that's basically an extension of your character at that point. They handle more like you than a vehicle. But God, trying to do anything in this game with vehicles sucks. Even with the controllers, some of them are not all that great.
It just feels like all the cars are like PS1 era driving games.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think it's partly just due to the fact that the camera on practically any vehicle sucks. More so, any vehicle that has a lot of lean to it, like a motorcycle. Ugh.
Yeah. Although as far as the vehicles go, I don't really have too much issue trying to control the motorcycles. Anything that's too fast is a nightmare. A lot because of the camera, but also partly because they handle like garbage. Airplanes are a disaster. Helicopters are fine. Boats are fine. Yeah, that's pretty much all the vehicles. I mean, tanks and stuff like that are fine. It takes a little bit used to.
Yeah, I was going to say tanks move so slowly that it's kind of hard to mess them up. And honestly, they're not really tanks because they don't have treads.
Do any of them have treads? I know that everything I've seen now is okay. I was gonna say everything I've seen now has got wheels, but I'm assuming that stuff eventually gets treads, but I guess not.
Nope.
The handling the tanks takes a little bit getting used to because the camera follows the turret. So I mean, how I've seen this done in basically any other game I've ever played with a tank that I can think of is that you move the camera and then the turret sort of moves with a little bit of lag because it's slow. So you move the camera to where you want and then you wait for the turret to rotate it around. But instead the camera follows the turret and it's got just what feels like just a little bit of, I don't know, drift to it. If that makes sense. Like kind of like the cursor will bounce around or move around a little bit. It's real bad if you're trying to drive and move the turret at the same time.
Yeah. I'm just going back to like World of Tanks where, it's so much better be able to look around just because you're not beholden to this archaic. Okay, move the mouse. Okay, now pick up the mouse, move it again because the turret will only move like 1/8 of a circle, right?
Yeah, and specifically on the mission where you have to steal the Bavarian tank and like drive it to the drop point, when enemies spawn behind you and in front of you at the same time, it's like, well, fuck, because it takes a while to spin the turret around. Usually I would just stop, activate the shield, and like just stop and shoot people until they were dead and then drive forward.
Oh, got out in called in some support with the rebel drop, and then got back in the tank and started driving.
Nice. The only mission so far I've had any issue with trying to play with the controller is the one where you're doing like sniper support, and that one's pretty rough because it's a controller. But I mean, I managed to make it work. The two people you're trying to protect have got a ton of health, and also they fight back too, so it's not too much babysitting. But I mean, right now all I'm doing is bitching. I really, really like this game. I'm having a blast playing it. I think in general, I kind of echo most of your sentiments that you discussed last time. The upgrade system is a little weird. If it was like you earn the gears and then you could just buy the upgrades that you wanted with them, that's fine. But because you have to get them in order, it's like, well, I don't care about this one. You know, I want to get
I hit a point with the wingsuits because I have one of the DLCs that gives you a better wingsuit. Well, I have like 15 gears that I have to get before I get another meaningful upgrade there because, okay, the braking, that's built into the upgraded one, and landing, that's also built into the upgraded one. So that's two upgrades that were made completely obsolete by a DLC.
Yeah. I don't have any of the wingsuit upgrades. So anytime I touch something, it's like, well, I'm falling out of the sky. But, you know, it's fine. I've gotten pretty good at flying around in the wingsuit. I mean, I know that in the DLC you have the powered one, so it's basically like just having another little plane. But I enjoy the movement and the control of the wingsuit and the parachute combination so much that I barely use fast travel. Which I have 3 flares, and you can fast travel for free in areas that you control. I noticed that. Actually, I think maybe that was one of the hints on the loading screen. But you know, you can fast travel around a lot, but I'm just like, nah, it's only like 4 kilometers. I'll wingsuit over there. That's fine. And it's just enjoyable. This is probably what I think of as one of the best examples of an open world game done right. There is lots of stuff to do. And maybe it is busy work, but it doesn't feel like busy work. The thing that feels the closest like busy work, whatever, to me, is doing the challenges to get the points for the upgrades. But just sort of in general, like, okay, here's the missions I got to do. I need to liberate the fuck out of all of these villages and these bases. I'm like, sweet. You know, kind of like just like a gear up montage. It's like, okay, it's time to go do the thing. Let me get all my stuff ready, and then I'm going to go in. You know, and I might call in a support drop to get some specific weapons or something if I'm going to take on a fort. But it's just enjoyable. I will play it for, you know, an hour, 2 hours at a time, maybe more. Hop in and go around and liberate the shit out of things. And it's great. That loop so far has not gotten old for me. And there's enough variety in the stuff where it's like, okay, do I want to do something like super combat heavy and take on like a base or a fortress or whatever? Or, you know, do I want to do something that's a little bit less about that and go liberate a town or a village? So there's good variety there.
My favorite thing I've been doing is with the powered wingsuit, go take on an oil rig.
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times, although without a powered wingsuit. I've just taken a jet. I liberated the fuck out of one of their military bases that has an airfield. And so I have access to what basically is like a MiG-25 and then like an F-16. And one of them has got bombs, and then the other one has got like double missiles. So it's like, I'm going to go make passes on an airfield. Or not an airfield.
I mean, that's pretty much what I'm doing, but I don't have access to a jet, actually.
Yeah. That's another thing that I find interesting, too. You and I are, at least when we talked Sunday, we're pretty close to each other in, like, the story. But, you know, you've played, like, probably twice as long as I have, and they've liberated the shit out of a lot more things.
Yeah, like, I have access to 2 different types of tanks. I've done probably more of the challenges. I have all the tether upgrades now, which is annoying because the tether upgrades are one of the few that require you to get full marks on all the challenges for it. Otherwise, you just have to sit there and only have like 3 or 4 of them. Which the tether upgrades are actually pretty important because they increase the number of dual tethers, which is linking one item and another, and then basically going 3 stooges and making them whack together.
Which is fun.
Yeah, it's also a lot of fun whenever you get the strength mod. So there's a mission coming up that I don't think you've done that gets a little hectic. I found having the tether upgrades really helps because you can just latch onto a vehicle and just go, I don't need you anymore. Just fling it.
Yeah, I want the strength upgrade. I've only got the first upgrade that gives you double the tethers, so I can do 4 instead of 2.
Yeah, I have 6 upgrades, and I have both the strength upgrades.
So I did get the achievement for destroying or liberating an outpost with only using the tethers. That was fun.
Yeah, see, I've gotten it to the point where the bases I have are starting to get a little bit more hectic. So I can't really do that until the end of the game, where I could reset things.
Yeah. I did it on like a small base that only had like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 fuel tanks and a generator and some radar. I've also seen plenty of big bases, like these sort of naval yards that are beneath like mountains or whatever.
Oh yeah, those are fun.
Those are fucking insane. Thankfully, there's no like death penalty, so you can die and just respawn and go try again.
But at the same time, there's also really no upgrade path for Rico outside of just getting more weapons because in the previous game you could upgrade your health and upgrade the amount of damage you could take. It's like upgrade the amount of impact damage you could shrug off essentially whenever you clip something being flying squirrel man. But outside of that, there's not really any upgrades. It's just you.
Yeah, when I got to the second set of islands or the second island, whatever, landmass, I mean, I started getting the newer weapons, but they didn't, for the most part, feel significantly better than the other ones that I had. And the standard weapons, like the machine guns and the shotguns, like looking at my thing, like I've got all of those already. So it's basically just the special weapons, like the different rockets and grenade launchers and stuff. And those honestly don't feel appreciably that much different from the RPG or the standard grenade launcher. Like, I've used the multi-rocket, and that comes in handy for aircraft. But otherwise, effectively, whenever you're whenever you're liberating the fuck out of something, it doesn't really make all that much difference. And the same goes for the multi-shot grenade launcher. The lock-on missile launcher is pretty handy. I like that one. But otherwise, it's like there's like 6 weapons that I'm like, I can just take it or leave it. I don't care which one of these I get. So I like the handguns for sort of style, but they are nowhere near as useful as any of the dual machine guns you can use. But the handguns are fun. Even the stronger handguns. I mean, they can one-shot kind of the weaker guys, but their ammo count's low, and when playing with a controller, spray and pray is a better option. But
for me, I've been going submachine gun, sometimes the or sometimes the handguns, but I like to go the machine gun as the 2-hander weapon. And then I kind of go between. I have the multi-missile launcher and the heat-seeking, the infrared that you can paint a target with.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been going between the 2 of those, depending on what I need. Although I do have some more interesting options as well, or starting to unlock those.
I've got the airstrike target painter. I've got that.
I have that. I haven't really used it. I do have a grenade launcher I haven't toyed around with yet.
Yeah. But, that kind of sucks because it doesn't really feel like it matters all that much what weapons you get. And there might be certain points where certain things are definitely better, but like
I think it's all situational as well. But the thing is that, especially once you get a few more bacons where you could bring in more weapons, as long as you're not in like one of those underground bases, you can easily swap weapons.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've started using the beacons more, just like to sort of vary it up. But the game is genuinely fun. I thoroughly enjoy playing it. It's a lot of fun. I haven't felt bored or lost or anything yet. I like the cast of characters. I mean, for the most part, they're stereotypes or tropes or whatever, but they're fun. That doesn't stop them from being fun. I like Rico. I like his kind of shitty one-liners. There's some really cool scenes.
Yeah, there needs to be more of them.
There do need to be. There's some really cool scenes, like over the top action, sort of movie cliche stuff. And I mean, I'll go ahead and say this because it's spoiled in the fucking trailer for the game. But like one of the first islands, sort of, I don't know, final mission or boss or whatever, like you ride a missile and use your tether to crash it into the ground so that it doesn't blow up a city. It's like you're fucking riding a missile. Like, that's super cool. It was a lot of fun. And I mean, it's just a cutscene, but who the fuck cares? It's awesome. I'm like, yeah, go Rico. And then his like buddy, his best friend Mario is like, I will never do anything that fucking cool in my life. He's like, it was pretty cool. And then they got it, like he kissed a cow for comic relief.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Rico, I'm a cow.
Oh. So it's a good game. I enjoy it. I mean, I think I haven't played 4. I have played 1 and 2. 1 is kind of pointless at the, it's very old. It was sort of a proof of concept type thing. I mean, it's not a bad game, but it's just old and it suffers from that. I think 2 is still probably the best one, but I don't know how well it runs on more modern hardware. I don't know if it's a game that suffers from its age at this point, because I think 2 came out in like 2009 or something like that. Or at least
I always had trouble with 2.
2010s.
I had this weird problem with 2 where it would never save its options. So every time I would restart the game, it would be in windowed mode at 720p with all the graphics settings kind of at extremely low.
I have had Just Cause 3 forget a few times to be in full screen mode, and it's been borderless, or not borderless, it's been in windowed mode, but otherwise I haven't had that problem. But I mean, Just Cause 3 is a lot of fun. I mean, it's not bad. I remember Just Cause 2 being better, but I also haven't played Just Cause 2 in like 5 years or something like that.
Yeah, I wish I could have the Rebel drop system with a Just Cause 2 upgrade system. Because Just Cause 2, it seemed to have more reason to do the upgrades because you could build up what you want.
Yeah.
And they also they didn't really have more upgrade or more collectibles scattered around. They just had more things that you had to find because you had the 2 or 3 different types of upgrade modules essentially that you had to collect a ton of. But at the same time, the collectibles in Just Cause 3 feel fairly pointless because, okay, have you done much of the collection of the upgrade or a collection of the collectibles?
No, basically none. I've picked up a couple.
Okay, so you have vintage parts, which if you collect all of, you get a weapon or a car or a vehicle of some sort. And from what I can tell, they are one of the better ones of their category, if not the best. But at the same time, you have really no reason to use them over anything else because everything is kind of just what you like. You have tapes that are scattered throughout the map that basically gives the backstory of this dictator you're trying to overthrow.
Yeah, the tapes. I found a couple of the tapes.
Yeah, and if you get all of those, you unlock his private helicopter, which is very badass. But at the same time, I honestly never really found a use for helicopters outside of mission-specific things because all the bases are protected by SAM missiles, and the thing is that a helicopter cannot dodge those, and you cannot pick those off far enough away to be able to just avoid them. So they've always been like a mode of transportation at best, or maybe taking out a town, or taking out a few targets for a town. But it's just felt pointless. There's Rebel Shrines, which if you light all those, you can fast travel for free from that province. But the thing is that they're so out of the way that by the time you find them, you've pretty much either liberated all of or near all of the different areas of that province. So, And then there's the stunt jumps, which if you do all of them across the entire map, you get a monster truck. Which,
Nice.
have you driven any of the bigger vehicles?
No, not. A bus. A bus is the biggest vehicle I've driven.
Okay, there's the dump truck. The dump truck is a big dump truck, as in it has a staircase that you have to go up to get into. Right?
Right.
It is fucking horrific. It drives like it's made of styrofoam. It has no weight to it. It has the turning radius of an island. And I can only imagine the monster truck's probably worse because it's faster. The dump truck is slow as fuck. So the fact that it's bouncy, if you hit something, you kind of pop up because the physics don't know what to quite make of that big an object hitting something.
Right.
So I could only imagine the monster truck is worse, and that's a reward. And is there anything else? I'm just double checking the collectible list. Vintage parts. Daredevil jumps, which gets you the monster truck, Rebel Shrines. Oh, Ancient Tombs, which I haven't done yet. Which gives you a couple different items. I haven't touched those, so I don't know what it is. And that's it. It just doesn't feel like there's any real reason to do any of it because unless you really want a particular weapon or, you just happen to find enough of the tapes that make it worthwhile, because once you liberate a province, it shows you as question marks where everything is on the map in that area.
Yeah,
so
I've noticed that.
So it's pretty easy to start knocking those out, especially if you have a good mode of transportation. It just feels like, right?
Got my wingsuit. Best mode of transportation there is.
Except when you strap a fucking rocket to it. It's some rockets. or some missiles.
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 They make everything better.
Yeah, air to surface missiles. Mm-hmm.
I love hacking those things. The surface to air missiles.
Oh,
and then just letting the helicopters show up and watch them die.
Yeah, one of the naval bases. They were talking about, watch out, the commanders, before they even finished the sentence, I had hacked all the surface to air missiles. So they just locked on and blew the commander out of the sky. And this was the second time I had to do this, because the first time, I just figured, okay, well, I'll humiliate the commander, grab his helicopter, and then kill him with it. Well, he fell through the ground and just was falling forever. And, well, yeah, I couldn't do anything to him because, he was something like somewhere in the Earth's core, but he hadn't died yet. So I had to go back, far enough away that basically he reset. And then that time before he came back in, I hacked all the surface-to-air missiles, so, he blew up.
Nice. I don't think I have anything else to say about it. I mean, it's like I said, it's really enjoyable. There's some stupid shit in it. Vehicle controls are terrible, but in general, it's a really enjoyable game that I'm definitely going to keep playing.
Yeah. Yeah, I just I wish the collectibles made more impact. Maybe they would if I care about the uh, some of the weapons or some of the vehicles. I mean, the fact that they tied the upgrade system to vehicle challenges, though, and then kind of de-emphasized using vehicles because they suck, is a head scratcher to me. I just don't get that one.
Yeah. Well, speaking of using vehicles, something. The last game I have on my list is Transport Fever 2. I've talked about both of this game's predecessors, Train Fever and then Transport Fever, quite a bit. At first glance, Transport Fever 2 looks like a graphical improvement to the first Transport Fever with the addition of a lot of new vehicles. It adds, previously there was American and European vehicles, which was basically Western Europe and then the United States. Now they have added Asian vehicles, which is there's stuff in there from China, Japan, India, and Russia. And then they have also added additional aircraft, ships, and then to the United States and European stuff, they've added other things as well. A new train here or there, or some new trucks, whatever, just little things there. And like I said, sort of at first glance, it just looks like, well, they've added all this stuff, and that's pretty cool. But the game is 100% completely reworked and different under the hood. Everything is different, and it's better. They have made it easier and more understandable to get detailed information about the map, all of your graphs for shipping cargo and passengers. The graphs are more readable, understandable. They've improved their UI a lot, so it's much more easily navigable. They've improved and completely changed the route management system and vehicle management system. It's a lot easier to go in and find things, and if you need to replace vehicles or if you want to change their maintenance schedule or tweak other things, you can do that. There's also kind of a set it and forget it setting where you could just like maximize the amount of maintenance that everything gets, and that basically makes it like hella expensive, but it lasts forever, so you don't have to worry about replacing it if you've got like a super duper profitable line and you just are just like, fuck it, I don't want to mess with this for a little while. They've completely but they've changed the time system. Previously, you could just fast forward or pause the game. So it played at one speed, the dates advanced at that speed, and you could make it go faster, but that was it. Now you can control date progression and time progression independently from one another. So if you want to stay in a particular era, say maybe you want to stay in the early game, to have to focus on the limitations that come from the slower, less powerful trains, for example, then you can either pause the timeline or set it to where the time progresses at either half speed or quarter speed, like date time, I should say, where dates progress at half or quarter speed. But you can still speed the actual gameplay up so that you're not having to wait for, 87 years for anything to happen. You can speed date progression up to 4 times normal speed, and then you can bump it down to a quarter speed and basically anything in between. So you can speed up through like really boring times, slow down, or even pause date progression to get to or stay in particular eras, which I have enjoyed. There's a good middle chunk in the game from like the 1930s to the 1970s where that you have a good mix of steam, diesel, and electric trains. But then the steam drops off, and then if you're playing America, the electric trains drop off. And it's nice to have that variety. So playing through that more slowly or pausing the date progression altogether is fun because for me, I like to play with my trains. So it's nice to have all of the different things available and can jump around and check out different things. They've completely overworked the aircraft system. You now have cargo aircraft by default. There were mods that added a lot of this stuff in, but it's all in the base game, and it's done much better than the mods were because the mods, as they often do, are kind of working with systems that weren't designed to do what the mods are trying to do, and it can be a little janky. Now this stuff is built in. There's cargo aircraft by default, which can be extremely useful when dealing with the map sizes, which are much larger this time. And you can also scale the amount of cities and industries that are in the game. That varies by map size as well, but it can be as few as 4 cities up to a maximum of 28, I believe, for like the super giant map. And then industries as low as like 20 up to a maximum of like a couple hundred based on your map size and the settings. They've added a tropical setting, which is basically like an island chain, but that makes that makes ships a lot more viable. You also can actually create waterways. Previously there were terrain manipulation tools, but you couldn't create additional water pathways. So shipping was extremely limited, and you basically had to just sit there and refresh the map generation until you got something with enough usable waterways to use shipping. But now with the tropical island setting and then the ability to actually create waterways and dig out canals and stuff, shipping becomes a lot more viable option. And then so there's also station modification. So also previously, you had to build 2 separate stations for everything. So if you wanted to have, for example, a line that supported both cargo and passenger trains, you would have to, at some point, separate it off into the city and create, one cargo station and one passenger station. It got really weird. And if you didn't pre-plan it, like in the early stages of the game, as cities grew, it would become either stupid expensive or just weird to wipe out like half of a city to plop down this train station and set up your rail line. Now you can use, or stations are modular. So you can have mixed stations that can handle cargo or passengers. You can add on to them later. You can add additional terminals so that if you've got a station that starts out small and you've only got 1 terminal, but then you want to add a second one, you can, and a third one, and so forth. You can increase the actual station platform size, which allows you to handle more cargo or more people at a station without hitting the overflow penalties. Because when you hit those, people and goods kind of just start to disappear to represent like they got tired of waiting and they left, or the goods expired, something like that. So larger stations let you get a lot more volume in before you hit the overflow penalty. And then the most important thing is, under the hood, everything has been completely reworked with how the game calculates needs for cities and calculates passenger travel. Previously, the simplest way to explain it and be hopefully as least boring as possible, the whole thing used to work on timers. And if you could get people somewhere fast enough, or if you could get goods somewhere fast enough, then you could, the demand would be there. But it created a lot of really unrealistic scenarios. And for someone like me, who's actually really interested in creating like these distributed networks or sort of different like hub and spoke systems, or, daisy chaining certain types of, there's a lot of different shit you can try to test efficiency and just sort of enjoy. But everything just sort of turned into like, I'm just going to fill this roadway with 1,000 trucks. That way, the way the game is calculating the time is that it's like 10 seconds or something, so that I can get demand across the entire map for everything. Now, not all cities demand all goods, which is a little weird. And that it's like, why don't you want food, city? Like Phoenix, Arizona, why don't you want food? Everyone needs to eat. But
they don't want it from you.
Fair enough. Not all cities want all goods. So that leads to some interesting, sometimes circuitous routes to get stuff to places. And need for things is no longer generated by timers. I've had routes where it takes maybe like something 45 minutes of game time, like calculated for it to get there, or 45 minutes of real time rather. And it still generates demand, and the whole thing works for passenger travel or cargo. Timing still matters for passengers a little bit, and that makes sense, because it's like, who wants to sit around and wait for 2 hours of, well, in game time, I guess 2 hours of real time would be like 10 years in the game. It's like, who wants to wait 10 years for a fucking boat to come and get me and take me to work in the next city over? But generally, if you create, especially in the early game, like if you create a route, people will take it. There's no other way for them to get around. Once cars become a thing, the timers really come into play a lot more for passenger travel. But there seem to be no limits on how many hops a good can go through. And there doesn't seem to be any limits on how long it takes something to get somewhere for calculating demand. Like if a city has the demand and you set up a route where the good can make it to the city, then everything will just work. And, you might have slow city growth if you're not providing steady, regular resources to it. But, I mean, it's still going to grow. There's still going to be demand, and the route's still going to work, which is just mwah. Because it lets you actually set up these distribution hubs. Whereas before, that might add too much time or add too many sort of hops for a good to take, and then the route would just fall apart because the game would be like, it can't get here fast enough. Fuck you, we don't need it. So I've started several games sort of as I've learned all of these systems. I've got one right now where I'm in the 1940s, and it's called Quarter Speed All the Way. And I've been playing the entire game with it on 1/4 date progression speed. So it's taken me a long fucking time to get to get there. Aircraft have finally helped me get to some stuff. Like I've got like one city that's sitting out like on an island by itself, and it's just been left alone the entire time. And I've got like these crazy train routes going across the entire map, and fucking horses and trucks everywhere, boats. I've dug like my own Panama Canal, because that's digging out canals is stupid fucking expensive, but it's wonderful because boats have massive cargo capacities that can outpace everything until like the 1950s, where you can get trains that are big enough and long enough to finally like outpace them cargo wise. And they're so cheap compared to everything else in the game. So it's offset by a really high cost to actually create canals and waterways, but it's worth it. So, I mean, in general, those are the big, huge, massive changes to the game. It had mod support right out the gate. There's a ton of mods already for it. It's mostly adding other, trains, trucks, planes, etc. But there's some other mods that quality of life stuff, like higher contrast colors for the different infographic modes and custom generated maps and stuff like that. I'm sure more will come. The game's only been out for a month, give or take. But it's very good. If you like this type of game, buy it. If you don't, I don't think this will change your mind. But I love it. So, yep. That's all the games that we played this past whatever time they came from.
Couple weeks,
yeah.
give or take. So how about a game nobody's playing unless you need to hit the elevator?
No, I'm good.
So, Rockstar is having issues again, but hey, it's not with GTA 5.
Nope. Rockstar has removed GTA 4 from Steam because of Games for Windows Live.
Yeah, hey, how about that? Games for Windows Live is dead, yet it's still screwing up games. How about that? That takes some talent. So basically, all of a sudden, Rockstar removed GTA 4 from Steam. And actually everywhere else, but Steam is the one that got the most attention. And there was some rampant speculation, particularly because a couple years back, they actually patched GTA San Andreas and upgraded it, but then removed a bunch of songs from the playlist because they no longer had the rights to do that because video games don't get perpetual music license, because of course they don't. So everybody was wildly speculating, and nobody saw this coming, that Rockstar is no longer able to generate keys because Microsoft took down Games for Windows Live. So, and that was the DRM that GTA 4 was running, and it was running the multiplayer, which has since gone pretty much dead because you can't connect to an offline server now, can you?
Nope.
And there's actually been some people reporting having severe issues even getting the game to run because it requires a Windows logon, and unless you already had an account set up, it's a bit to get installed, and honestly haven't even bothered trying to be able to confirm it. But yeah, it seems like this is something that they should have seen coming, huh?
Yeah, I wondered when this was going to happen, honestly. Like, I mean, I hoped it didn't because we have GTA 4 on our game club list. I've played it a couple of times previously. I've thought about playing it again. And I mean, it's not like we couldn't, but man, it sounds like it's going to be a hassle unless they do something to fix it. And I don't expect them to.
Yeah, supposedly they're in the process of working on it. But this is Rockstar, and they've also been working on single player content for GTA 5 for ages.
Yeah. So good luck with that, I suppose.
It's more of just a what the hell, right? I mean, they have stupid amounts of money from GTA 5's multiplayer. Just fix this, Put it on Steamworks. Put it on whatever, right? Put it on your shitty launcher, because I know that's probably going to be the solution in the long run. Once, that one poor intern that's having to sit there trying to pull through the code to figure out where the hell they integrated games from Windows Live stuff, right?
Yeah, that poor intern.
Yeah.
Hopefully they remember to feed and water him.
Yeah. I mean, that's how they lost the last 3, right?
Yeah, that and crunch hours. They overworked him to death.
Yeah. Well, they could always just send him over to CD Projekt Red.
Yeah, I've seen about that.
Yeah, I did put it on the docket because I wasn't sure if there was a lot to talk about there, but extended crunch, not a good sign. Not a good sign. Right?
Nope, not a good sign.
I mean, is there really anything else to talk about this outside of just kind of a PSA? Hey, if you haven't played GTA 4, you're not going to be able to do so legitimately for a while. You may want to just go ahead and pirate that thing. It's kind of funny. Also, this is another case of DRM hurting the actual customer instead of the pirates, because GTA 4 got cracked pretty quickly. Right?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, most things do, though, honestly.
Yeah, and if I recall correctly, Games for Windows Live, at least back in the day, caused some severe performance issues. And GTA 4 isn't exactly light when it comes to performance anyway, because they did this weird procedural animation system that, honestly, has anybody really used that these days?
I don't know, actually. I don't know. Because I haven't seen anything about anything like that in some time.
Yeah, GTA 4... hang on, I'm trying to remember exactly. Yeah, it's this procedural Euphoria software that they use. Essentially, it was kind of a combination of a soft body rigging over a skeleton. So, in theory, I mean, it does happen occasionally. The ragdolls won't just glitch into each other like they do on, let's say, Source, where you could just have limbs just flying around like crazy. It does a kind of this constrained, realistic body movements. It looks like it's pretty much just Rockstar stuff. It is built into the Rockstar Advanced Game Engine, or Rage. Hey, wait a minute, they stole my thing.
Nice.
So it is in GTA 5. So, yeah, that's where it is these days, and not really anybody else is using it. Max Payne. It looks like it's pretty much just a Rockstar thing, which is kind of sad actually, because that was a really groundbreaking thing back in the day, wasn't it? Euphoria is a game animation engine based on the dynamic motion synthesis. Yeah, it's basically animates 3D characters on the fly. It's really quite impressive in at least the GTA 4, where if a character gets drunk, they realistically stagger and move around and are bits to control. But yeah, hey, they're drunk, right?
Yeah, I'm a bitch to control when I'm drunk.
Yeah, until you throw up in the bathtub, right? Then you get better.
Yeah. In some ways I get better, in some ways I get worse.
Oh, yeah. But that's part of the reason why GTA 4 had such ludicrous system requirements back in the day, was that it was using that procedural system. On top of Games from Windows Live doing some shenanigans in the background. But it looks like, well, nobody's going to be playing it for a bit unless you already own it, which is just Rockstar, right? What the hell, right?
Yep.
I mean, sure, they're evil, but at least they're somewhat competent, unlike Bethesda.
Somewhat competent, totally evil.
No, Bethesda's completely incompetent.
Oh, yeah, I was saying Rockstar. Somewhat competent, totally evil. Bethesda, mostly incompetent, totally evil.
At least when they're in charge of developing. If they're in charge of publishing, as long as they keep their sticky little fingers out of it. Right?
Indeed.
So, shall we move along to the next topic unless you have something to say?
Nope, I'm good. Let's move along to the next topic. Every Half-Life game is free to play on Steam for the next 2 months.
Yeah, if you haven't played Half-Life, now's the time, right?
Indeed. Half-Life 1, 2, and is it also the, what is it, Half-Life Blue, whatever, that's like
Blue Shift, yeah. That's free as well for the next couple months. Even if you don't own it, it's part of a promotion for Half-Life Alyx, their VR title. They're letting people go back and play the old shit. Which, there's... Half-Life is one of those games that's... I'm not sure if it's aged well or hasn't aged all that well, just because it was groundbreaking at the time. But it became so bog standard because everybody took ideas from it. Because it was so revolutionary.
Yeah. I'm thinking about playing Half-Life 1 and 2 during this time. I don't know if I actually will or not. But
I mean, I have Half-Life 2 because I got the orange box.
Yeah, I have Half-Life 2. I've had Half-Life 2 for a long time. I haven't played it. I've never played Half-Life 1. So I'm thinking about playing them. I mean, the time is right.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I type in Half-Life 2 and I got a game called Half Dead 2 or Half Dead Squared from Google, which just looks like this horrible asset flip.
Nice. Half Dead 2. But yeah,
I kind of I didn't do all the DLCs for Half-Life 2 because I naively thought that they were going to release the third installment sometime in my natural lifespan. Right.
Good luck with that.
But I think both of the games, they're really heavy on story if you know where to look. Because it's one of those things that it's told through gameplay and not through directly telling you what's going on. You have to infer a bit of it, from what I recall at least. But because they were so groundbreaking at the time and so many people or so many developers used them as inspiration, back and playing Half-Life 2 later, felt so kind of dated because this idea was done better here, here, and here, but that's not really fair because this game came out in 2004. And honestly, character model wise, the game still doesn't look that bad. World wise, it looks a little dated, but that's, it's a fucking old game.
Right.
But the in-between sections where you're doing all the puzzle solving, because they were showing off the physics engine in Half-Life 2, it's like, oh, here's another seesaw puzzle. Oh, here's another, throw things in here to move the crane, which is boring by today's standards. But in 2004, that was mind-blowing,
Yeah.
And it's kind of
real physics, interactions.
Yeah, it's
Very
like
cool stuff.
it's kind of like just looking back and not really appreciating it because we have 15 some years of game development past this. I will say that it's still very worthwhile playing, and because it's not a modern shooter, it's actually rather enjoyable, especially whenever you don't have things like regenerating health, so you have to be a little bit more strategic. Because that's really nice, huh?
Yeah. I think I'm gonna try. I'm not gonna promise that I'm gonna play them, but I think I'm gonna try. Like I think I mentioned this. Like I'm trying to play 12 games in 2020, so it averages once a month. And not only would I be going back and playing the original Half-Life, which I've never played before, but I would be adding to that list if I beat it.
Well, our game club for next month isn't that demanding, so that would be a good time to do it. But we do have a demanding game coming up in March, so that you may want to use that to get some more time on the March game club.
Possibly.
And tease, right?
Yes. Yes, indeed. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. All
Jared,
right.
put your skirt back down. They don't want to see that.
Too late. Oops, did I do
My
that?
eyes!
All right. Moving on to our last news topic, which is going to go by pretty quick. Joe Biden calls game developers, quote, little creeps who make titles that, quote, teach you how to kill. Fuck Joe Biden. I think that about sums it up.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is just, what the hell, right? I mean, he seems so out of touch with literally everything, huh?
He's very old. I assume that's part of it. I mean, I know that doesn't necessarily mean... Because, Bernie Sanders is an old dude, and he seems to either understand or have enough people around him that do understand and is willing to listen. But I liked Joe Biden when he was the VP. But, there could have been a lot of stuff that I wasn't as into politics then or, paid attention as much. He could have been this way for a long time, and I just didn't notice. But, it really sucks. Like, there's so much information and research that says that neither of those things is true.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and look at the quote, the big one. And then, let's see, this was for which gaming executive Biden was referring to as a creep. Gotaku has some theories about who the person might be, including EA then CEO John Mercutio. And then one of these righteous people said to me that, we are the economic engine of America. We are the ones, and fortunately I had done a little homework before I went and said, find it fascinating. Brian continued, as I added up the 7 outfits, everyone there but Microsoft, I said, you have fewer people on your payroll than all the losses that General Motors has just faced in the last quarter of employees. So don't lecture me about how you've created all this employment. The point is, there's an arrogance about it, an overwhelming arrogance that we are the ones. We can do what we want to do. I just disagree. you're forgetting. Okay, well, first of all, saying that only the developers are the ones that are being fueled by the game industry is delusional. I think that's fair to say because you have the entire underpinning of the sales staff. You have support teams. You have quite a bit, actually, when you said and think about it. And just the amount of money games industries makes, right? I mean, it is the biggest entertainment industry, bar none. Right?
Yeah.
And talking about how it just kids to kill. Well, gee, if only we had a psychiatrist here that could talk about that.
I mean, I've talked ad nauseum about that. It's not true. We know it's not true. I don't need to go into that part again. I think back to the last thing you said. Actually, I think the film. I can't remember if the video game industry passed the film industry, or if it was like right behind it. But it was like right there last year or maybe 2 years ago. So if it's not the biggest, it's the second biggest.
Yeah, and he's talking about how games teach you how to kill. And how is... okay, so are you going to go after Hollywood for having violent movies? Or are you going to go after that rap music for being all gangsta? I mean, if you're going after violent media, being an active participant, and I'm using active participant in massive sarcasm quotes with the fact that you're holding a controller, well, I would say a fair amount of people have this thing where they can tell reality from fiction. Now, my Facebook feed may disagree with that at some points, but that's beside the point. Wait for Jared to chuckle.
I'm making a face and like shaking my head like, yeah.
But the thing is that there's been no proof that it does anything but have a positive impact by being an outlet. And, okay, well, what about the people that yell at movies or really get into a TV show whenever, there's a mass murder going on or, when a character that you hate gets killed? Aren't you invested? Aren't you being a participant? No, you didn't pull the trigger or chop off the head with a giant fucking sword or shove a pineapple up Hitler's ass. But you're still invested. You're still part of the scene. So how is it so different?
Yeah. Fuck you, Joe Biden. I hope I'm not having to choose between you and the agent.
The moldy orange?
Yeah. I hope that's not my choice. I mean, I'll pick you if that's my choice, because fuck that Trump guy, bastard, but I don't want it to be that.
I mean, Trump is just out of touch. I mean, I could use that, just stop that sentence right there, but... I mean, they used a video to illustrate... Well, I'm just reading. I used a video to illustrate video game violence back in 2018, which was blamed for following a mass shooting, which was where we started this whole restart of video games cause violence in the first place, because Trump is a bigger dipshit.
So... back to gaming versus movies as an industry. The game industry, if you exclude mobile, the game industry pulled in nearly double what the film industry did. If you include mobile gaming, it's triple.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that he's looking at the AAA industry and saying, well, you guys aren't so big. You only employ a few hundred people. But he's not really considering literally anybody that could produce a game these days. I mean, how many... Well, not even including mobile, which really lowers the bar. But how many one-person development teams have we seen spring up in the last few years? Or how many, handful, sub 5 development teams have we seen pop up in the last few years that were runaway indie successes?
Quite a few.
Just saying that there's not a lot of employees does not discredit the entire industry. You fucking nitwit.
Indeed. Yeah. Fuck Joe Biden. Fuck you, Joe Biden.
Yeah, there was a Reddit comment I saw a while back for Joe Biden. It was, I would vote against him in the spring, but begrudgingly vote for him in the fall. Meaning that if he somehow wins the primary, which he's slipping because he's kind of gone off the deep end, especially with video game violence and marijuana.
Yeah, those two things have kind of slid him way off the radar of many voters, particularly in the younger crowd.
Yeah, the younger crowd is just going, okay, boomer at this point.
Oh my. That's an interesting phrase that I hear several times a day.
Oh, really?
Sometimes use. But yeah, I hear that a lot from the younger people that I see and people I follow on Twitter.
I haven't really paid attention to Twitter all that much lately.
Well, for the most part, you're not missing stuff. Not missing anything.
Yeah.
I follow some interesting people on Twitter now who post a lot of things. One person in particular who is more an anarchist than anything, and so they have lots of interesting things they post.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to have to fill up my Twitter feed with some interesting people. I mean, I do have God, so, yeah, he pops up every so often.
Indeed. That's the only place I follow God is on Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, let's see. Has he latest tweet from God. Sometimes you could spend so much time staring at your phone and forget about all the beauty around you. So be sure to Google that.
Google that. Nice.
Thank you for praying to God. All angels are currently busy assisting other galaxies. We appreciate your penance. Your plea is important to us. Please stay on your knees, and your prayer will be answered in the order they are received.
Nice.
One more. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it should say to move forward in the queue, please prostrate yourself.
Announcement. As of today, my son is stepping away from his heavenly duties, will no longer be referred to as Son of God, will no longer receive funds from Christianity, will repay indigenous people for the cost of missionary work, will spend most of his time in Canada.
Nice.
Oh. Yeah, the one place I follow God, right?
I'm now following Satan. I've never thought to follow Satan, so I'm now following Satan.
Well, let's just put it this way: I'm on tweets from the tweet of God.
Yeah,
and it says you may also like God, Seth Rogen, Satan.
Oh, nice.
So, which Satan did you find?
The one that's at S8N. So on January the 18th, Satan. Even I get offended when someone says go to hell. I don't want you here either. And then a link to something called Barstool Sports, and it just says
Okay,
what?
that's the one I found.
Yeah,
So,
scientists want to start jerking off dead bodies to collect their sperm. Oh,
come to hell! The ice cream machine in McDonald's is never broken.
oh, who to follow? Jacksepticeye makes sense in relation to Satan, and Matt Pat from Game and Movie Theories, which also makes sense. Matt Pat annoys the shit out of me. He's not a bad person. It's just his voice makes me kind of want to punch him in the face.
Stop asking Jesus to grab the wheel. He can't drive. Unvaccinated kids are not accepted into hell.
Makes sense. Makes sense that even Satan doesn't want them there.
So we got kind of off track, but
we did. So
that's hardly new, is it?
No, it's not. Moving forward, we didn't have a community corner on for this week. With game night gone, that was kind of one of the regular things that kept us in community corner. So please send us your letters, voicemails, tweets, images, Discord messages, carrier pigeons. Please don't throw a brick with a letter tied to it through my window, although I will accept that for the show. Just you'll have to pay to fix my window.
Isn't that what the Patreon is for?
Yeah. Tell them about all those things.
Well, you can email us, vglpodcast@gmail.com, or just tweet us, VGLpodcast, on the Twitter. So, Discovery Queue?
We are running up against when I like to start winding down and getting ready for bed. I would appreciate heading towards the end of the show.
Okay, we could do that.
So, Rage, hit him with them socials.
Well, I've been Caffeine Rage. You can find me on YouTube, Gaming with Caffeine Rage. You can find me on Steam, Caffeine Rage. You can find me on Twitter, if you could grab my attention, Gaming with CR. And you've been?
You can find me on the YouTubes by searching for Gaming Psychologist, on Twitter at JMA4707, and on Steam at JArthur4707.
And if you wish to let them know what episode of the podcast you're coming from, the password for this week is Garbanzo Bean.
Interesting.
Garbanzo Bean. One of my
random
ones.
One? Okay.
Yeah.
Not a super big fan of garbanzo beans. They're okay, when prepared the right way, but they're not my favorite.
Dare I ask what's your favorite bean?
Oh, that's tough. You can do a lot of stuff with pinto beans. I like them.
True.
I'm not a big fan of black beans, honestly. Green beans also, depending on how you prepare them and cook them, you can do a lot of different stuff with them. Probably pinto beans. They're good to eat. They go well in all kinds of stuff, or you can mash them up into refried beans, and I like those.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would really have a favorite because I only eat beans every so often, so which is probably a good thing actually, because we don't need to turn my apartment into a gas chamber.
Hi-oh.
Because it's already enough of one already.
Alrighty then.
Oh, yeah, we're getting rather silly because it's late. What can I say? But if you wish to help with the silliness or try to get us in line, you can email us, vglpodcast@gmail.com, with your letters, voicemails, or gaming-related topics, or just tweet them to us, VGL Podcast, on the Twitter. Our lovely, lovely patrons have made this madness possible. You can find out more at patreon.com/VGL Podcast. And you can also go over to our website, vglpodcast.podbean.com, which hosts the show notes, the RSS feed, Links to all our stuff online, or you just find us on your podcatcher of choice. Our intro and outro music is On the Ground by Kevin McLeod, and you can find his work over at incompetech.com. And
as always, as his lovely music starts to roll across my voice, bye now.
see you next time.
Bye-bye.